Hello, Matthew. Um, I would like to give you my perspective on the series of video that you've made about German idealism. But first, I will begin by quoting a poem from Wordsworth, which says, "Our birth is but a sleep and a forgetting. The soul that rises with us, our life's star, has had elsewhere its setting, and cometh from afar, not in entire forgetfulness, and not in utter nakedness, but trailing clouds of glory do we come from God, who is our home." I think that's the poem. And as of now, when I am making this video, I know myself to be what Hegel calls the negative, but also what Hegel calls reason. So hopefully, when you watch this video, and I have the belief that you will in the distant future, but I understand that when the distant future occurs, it will be now for you. So you will watch this video now in the distant future because they are the same. It's quite complicated, and I have the belief, it's not absolute certainty, but the belief that someday you will understand me and you will understand yourself and you will understand Hegel and you will understand the world. And when you do, you will laugh at me, and hopefully you will not judge me too harshly, because you will possess the knowledge of what to be the negative means, and that it's a very difficult task. So if I had one wish, and maybe it will not be fulfilled, I don't know, it's please, when you do understand me fully, do not judge me too harshly, and I give you the permission to laugh at me someday, to make fun of me, because yeah. Um, I have watched the 7 videos about German idealism, and I will try to give you my perspective on the topic. And when you understand what to be reason and to be the negative means, you will understand that I cannot be fully myself without sharing knowledge with others, and that an attempt to understand everything all by my own, all by myself, is precisely evil, because if I listen to my selfish self, I would spend the rest of my days reading books and trying to understand everything all on my own to give myself a sense of self-worth. But I am in a moment of the development of my consciousness where I've understood that I have to let go of myself in order to recover myself, if that makes sense, and that I have to share with others who are a reflection of myself, for better and for worse, what I have perceived about the view of the totality, and that I must find my joy in sharing knowledge with others. This is, in Hegel's view, the positive coming out of the negative. And it's a difficult task, because I must give up my little self, and my little self wants to remain in his little selfish self, but I have to find the strength and the courage and the will to let go. And a first step towards letting go of myself is to share my understanding, my knowledge with others that I think I understand, and to accept that I am, as a finite being, I am limited, and I make mistakes and I make errors, and in a strictly scientific view, I am quite ignorant and I have much to learn, and maybe I will never learn, I don't know, but I've also understood that knowledge is real only when shared, and knowledge kept for one's own is is evil, and I must share my view of of the world and of German idealism in this particular case. And to give you a broad view of what German idealism is to me, I would say that first, it's deadly serious. But it's not as serious as it seems, because it's also very comical. And that may be, I don't know, but that may be the most amazing, funniest philosophy ever invented. I'm not yet sure. I know that there are serious aspects that I won't like, but the way I interpret it, it's so amazing that it's worth sharing. So hopefully I'm not wrong in this view of German idealism. I could begin by saying that you are a figure of consciousness, and that in order to liberate myself and to recognize myself, I must recognize you in your universal determination as a moment of reason becoming conscious of itself, and as an expression of the world spirit becoming conscious of itself. I could also say that you are a mode of the one infinite substance. You are a monad in the Leibnizian view. And in a more poetic, maybe, way, you could say that you are a mirror of God, and the image that you reflect back to God is quite brilliant. And if I could speak in the name of God, and I am not yet allowed to do it because I am just the negative and reason, but I would say that the image that God sees through you is brilliant and amazing. So yeah. My purpose is to give birth to a super mind. I'm not strictly speaking a pan-psychist. I'm more of a pan-noetic, if I might use the term. The idea that there is one mind, and that this one cosmic infinite mind must become conscious of itself. And to be honest, I have no idea what it will be like when this one cosmic mind becomes conscious of itself as one totality thinking itself. I don't know if I will still be conscious of it, and I wish I will. I don't know, but we will see. But that is my purpose, to bring being to a full consciousness of itself. And yeah, I must lose my empirical self in order to recover my higher self, which is my cosmic self, my intellectual self, my spiritual self. And I am in the process of understanding that. You talk about in the first video about Platonic ideas, and in the realm of pure thought, the realm of divine ideas, you and I are identical, and we must recognize one another. We are different in our limited selves, in our body, in our empirical psychology, but when we elevate ourselves to the mind of the pure contemplation of ideas, the idea living inside you and the best ideas living inside me are identical. You said in your presentation of Plato as being a source of inspiration for German idealism that the world is inverted according to Plato. And in 2018 I had this view that the world was inverted, that what we take to be material realities are actually intellectual ideas. And I will give you an anecdote. Cultural Hegelianism, as some sort of philosophy of life, one might say, I had tried to share with others my view of art, but especially of modern pop culture. And in my best moments, I am capable of grasping the Platonic ideas at work in modern pop culture. When I see attractive singers in modern pop music. And when I think philosophical thoughts, I am capable of grasping the intellectual beauty, the philosophical beauty made manifest in the realm of nature by a process with which I'm not yet familiar. But my purpose is to help you and me and anyone see the Platonic archetypes at work, not only in modern pop culture, but everywhere in the world. So my purpose is to adopt a purely intellectual view of reality. That's difficult, but yeah. You talk about the light and the dark, or maybe that's me, but in pure light, in the pure light of the sun, one doesn't see anything because it's so brilliant that it's blinding. And in order for light to occur, from a logical standpoint, there must be dark, and everyone hates the dark, myself included, but from a logical standpoint, I must understand that without darkness, there would be no light, and there is only vision in an enlightened dark or darkened light. And what gives birth to all the colors of the world is the interaction between light and dark. And yeah. So I am, against my own will, I am logically justifying the existence of the dark. Because opposite determinations only exist in their unity, in their reciprocal determination, and one cannot be thought of without the other, because that's one-sided thinking, which is the work of der Verstand, the understanding, or the Kantian mind. And in Hegelian speculative reason, the unity, the opposites are in a conceptual and speculative unity, and that's the true thought of things. It's to think them in their conceptual unity. So yeah. In absolute idealism, the ideal and the real must coincide. Reality must be idealized, and the idea must be realized. So absolute idealism is also absolute realism, and it's the rationalization of the totality of being. And the more I understand the world, the more I find it amazing, more amazing than anything imaginable. It's so amazing, so brilliant, so wonderful that I'm in a state of wonder. But I understand also that I will have to pay a price in terms of suffering to have this experience of reality, because we all exist within God, and suffering exists within God. And I understand from an abstract point of view that I will have to suffer, and I am questioning myself, is it worth it? It's not like I have a choice, because it's already logically determined that I will suffer. But the question is, after having suffered, will I say to myself, whoa, it was difficult, but it was worth it, because being and thinking God, so to speak, is so amazing that suffering makes the experience worth the amazement produced by this God experience. I don't know if I will be able to say that, but as of now, I will be honest with myself. The more I understand reality, the more I find it amazing. It's amazing. You talk about the Copernican revolution, and the way I envision things, the history of science is a projection of reason backward in time, and it is the story of reason itself. And the Copernican revolution gave rise to the Kantian revolution, which itself gave rise to German idealism with Fichte and the absolute ego, and finally with Hegel. And in order to become God, God in the form of not God, in the form of consciousness, must become the center of his own world, and must become his own light and his own sun. And as long as consciousness believes that the world is moving without it, the consciousness being a part of the movement, it is in a false consciousness. Consciousness must understand that the world is revolving around itself, and that's a vision of the sun, which is just a symbol for the conceptual understanding of reality. You talk about the recollection and the anamnesis of Plato, but to remember, it works only in English, means to put back together the separate members which have been dismembered. And God, as I envision it, is a process of dismemberment and remembrance. And God, by the work of negativity, separates himself from himself and splits himself in a very high number of individual pieces. And in order to remember himself and to become God again, he must reunite and remind the individual pieces of the one cosmic mind of their relationship with the others, and their relationship with God, and their relationship with the world, and to reconnect what has been disconnected. And to remember means to remind others of who they really are in the mind of God. And that's how God can remind himself and remember himself, his own true identity. That's how I envision it. So, yeah. And the birth, our coming forth into existence, our being plunged into the world, which is a traumatic experience and a painful process, and we encounter a feeling of separation and lack and degradation, and we miss something. We don't know, we don't quite know why, but it's because we have been separated from God, and the journey of the soul, which is also the travel of the mind, is to reconstruct our identity with the divine by an intellectual and cognitive process of self-recognition. And yeah. Ethics means to act without taking into account the possible negative consequences. Is to acting out of pure ethics is to act, to do one's duty, whatever the consequences. The question is, am I capable of being ethical at least once in my life? Because I am the negative, and the negative is the principle of moral bankruptcy and moral evil. But the question is, out of the negative must come a positive. So the question is, am I capable of acting ethically at least once? I don't yet know. Also, about the negative and its relationship with idealism. The negative hates being what it is. And how should I explain this? A part of me loves idealist thinkers because they enable me to understand myself. But a part of me hates idealist thinkers because I know that, truth be told, there can be only one idealist thinker, and to be a real idealist is to accept that all other idealist thinkers in a history of thought are just projection of the one mind which thinks the world. So to be a real idealist is um, to bear the burden of suffering in the flesh and to accept, to be true to one's own doctrine and to say, this suffering feels very real, but I must accept that from an idealist point of view, it is not really real. It feels very real, but it is not really real. So the negative is logically forced to become an idealist. And he resents other idealists for their lack of real existence, because it's easy to say, oh, let's be a philosophical idealist. The material world is just a projection of the mind. It's very easy to say that, but when the material world hurts you, it becomes much more difficult to be an idealist. But yeah, that's the path I'm on to. So yeah, the problem with philosophers, no matter how brilliant and intelligent they may be, those who have a formal training in philosophy, they are dedicated to the study of philosophy. And the problem, if I might speak of a problem, is that they are just philosophers. And a real philosopher is not just a philosopher, it is a philosopher and its opposite. He must be interested in every topic. He must want to grasp the whole of being and not just the philosophical view of being. And I myself, I am not as smart as trained philosophers who have a PhD in philosophy, but what differentiates me is that I have become interested in all the topics, or most of them at least, within being. And I have a broad view, and it is this interest that I have for every particular topic which has led me to philosophy as the conceptual understanding of the process of gaining knowledge about all the layers of being. So yeah, yeah. You say in some of your videos that nature is full of death and full of suffering. And the most difficult task for the idealist thinker and for reason is to love nature, to find love in death and in suffering. This is the most difficult task. So the negative hates everything because nature causes suffering, and a truly conceptual understanding of nature is to understand the beauty and the intelligence and the magic in nature. And it is the most difficult thing because nature has the power to torment and to humiliate. And if we look at the Darwinian process, I'm not strictly speaking a Darwinian, but Darwinism is the story that probably reason says to itself and tells itself to give a representation of its own development within time, that how the superior beauty, superior strength, superior intelligence can arise from the process of negation and evolution and ruthless selection of the inferior. It's Darwinism is alchemy projected in time, and to be a philosopher, no, to be a wise person, a wise mind, is to understand that suffering is the condition of beauty and intelligence, and one has to love intelligence and beauty more than suffering. And yeah. I don't know who is the I which speaks, but that's not relevant at this moment. I am afraid of myself. The negative is afraid of himself. And I am afraid of nature, because nature is the realm of death and suffering, and I'm afraid of that. But I have a hope, maybe it's delusional, I don't know, that the process of God, which is the life of the absolute, I hope that it is not just negativity, but that the process of self-illumination, an enlightenment of the others, and a reciprocal enlightenment, the positive aspects contained within the path of the absolute becoming conscious of itself. I hope that within the process, at some moment, we will be able, as a collective being thinking itself, to enlighten one another reciprocally, and that this vision of self-illumination of all the parts constituting the mind of God becoming conscious of itself, that it will be worth the suffering. That I don't know. I hope. But yeah. The second video, I will put a link to a song, to many songs, but I took notes, and I would like you to read, to listen to the song Decode by Paramore. I don't know what your tastes in women are on a personal level, because I cannot understand the individual perspective of others. I can only understand the others through the logical, conceptual, universal thoughts that they express. But as an empirical individual, I find the singer of the band Paramore very attractive. And in my view of German idealism, absolute spirit is made manifest to himself in art, religion, and philosophy, and most notably in modern pop culture, which is a form of art. And I would like you to listen to the lyrics of the song, and to apply all your philosophical knowledge to try to decode the lyrics, and to understand that it is spirit talking to himself. And yeah, so and also the song, no, she says, the singer, which in my view is a Platonic idea made manifest. It takes quite a lot of thinking to arrive at this point of view, but she says, you are always taking sides. This is the substance talking to the individual, and accusing the individual of adopting a Kantian way of thinking, which is dualistic, one-sided thinking, categorical thinking. And truth is speculative. Truth is Hegelian. It is a thought. It's an intellectual intuition, which means a conceptual, speculative grasping of the opposites in their unity. And she asks, how did we get here? I used to know you so well. So Matthew, when you listen to my words, try to connect the dots between the introductory words by Wordsworth, so classical romantic poetry, the song by Paramore, Decode, modern pop culture, and what you know about Hegel and Kant and the mind and one-sided thinking and all your mystical insights. I'm planting the seeds. It's not very rigorous. It's not very ordered. It's not very. It's knowledge building itself on the move. So I'm not sure that it will be sufficient. But if you could connect the dots, you will get a better understanding of German idealism. You already understand abstractly, but you can have a better understanding. Of my view of German idealism, at least. Because all the layers of being, all the degrees, the structures, the levels of being, logic, nature, and all the manifestations of spirit are interconnected. They are in a reciprocal interaction of self-cognition. So, yeah. And she says, the lyrics, do you see what we've done? We're going to make such fools of ourselves. The negative, when the time of understanding comes, we'll understand that it is a fool, and that it made a fool of himself, because there is only God, and it is the negative which brought about the forgetfulness of God and the unity of all things, and that's a foolish mistake. And when the time comes, I will, my higher self will laugh at my lower self for being so foolish. But yeah. So about Platonic beauty. Um, Platonic beauty is a cunning of reason, because God, which is the higher principle of the ordering of reality, creates physical beauty in the beauty of modern artists, so that everyone is tempted, is attracted spontaneously to the contemplation of the beauty of these women who are, that's a note for myself, mostly European, not only, but mostly. And and the masses are spontaneously attracted by these beautiful female artists. And Plato told us that it's a trick, and Hegel would say the same, that beauty in the realm of nature, physical beauty, especially of women, is a trick that reason. Plato didn't talk about cunning of reason, but yeah, that the soul is spontaneously attracted by beauty, but it is only a means to elevate itself to the contemplation of intellectual beauty and the beauty of the forms. And the masses love the beauty of the artists, but they don't have the time or the interest to get interested into speculative German idealism. And the speculative German idealists, the trained formal philosophers, they are very knowledgeable about German idealism, but they have a disdain for the modern culture, and not always, but some of them have a disdain for modern pop culture. And the purpose of German idealism is precisely to unite the priests, which here are the experts in the classical tradition of idealism, and the masses, and to make them one, and to make the masses see the philosophy at work in everyday cultural and artistic experience, and to make the philosophers realize that their philosophy is made manifest in everyday modern art and culture. And this is the dream of Schelling or Hegel. We'll never know, in the oldest system program of German idealism, to unite the elites and the masses in the contemplation of beauty and yeah. Okay. And then I know that you will watch this video many times when the time comes. So what I say, you will not understand the first time, but you will watch it again and again, and you will understand at some moment. The song "Hot and Cold" by Katy Perry. That's another illustration. It is the relationship between the substance, which is the world confronting me, of which you are a moment and a mode, and the negative, which is the negative of the substance, that which is separated from the unity of all things. And she says, you always think, always speak critically. The problem of the negative is that he is deluding himself by adopting a dualistic thinking, whereas in truth, all things are one. And when the negative thinks with a speculative mind, he connects with the whole of being, and he remembers himself that all things are one. So this song, like many manifestations of modern artistic pop culture, can only be properly understood by using the knowledge of German idealism and the relationship between Kant and Hegel and a little bit of Plato. So the purpose of philosophy is not to understand philosophy, it is to understand the world, the entirety of the world. And a philosophy which is just philosophical, which remains in the empty abstractions of philosophical classrooms, is dead philosophy. It must conceptualize the entirety of being and the process of unfolding of world spirit. Philosophy is the philosophy of the real and of the present. And yeah. The song "Hot and Cold" by Katy Perry. We used to be just like twins, so in sync, in synchronicity or in unison. I could say that to you, Matthew, if you're still listening to me. We, in in a distant past, which probably never existed, but we used to be conceptual brothers, an infinite mind, and we used to be on the same intellectual wavelength, and we lost ourselves because the negative brought disruption within the divine totality. And she says the same energy now is a dead battery. And when you understand the meaning of this song, you will understand the famous passage in the preface of the Phenomenology, where Hegel says that the negative is the energy of pure thought, the I, the self, and it's also death. We used to laugh about nothing. So the substance says to the negative, when we knew one another as being one, we used to laugh about everything. But now, because of the separation, things have become deadly serious. And yeah. I took many notes while watching your videos, and I will be true to myself. When I understood Katy Perry and German Idealism, I said to myself, God is absolutely amazing. And then I said, I know that while I am making this video, there are Ukrainians dying, being murdered by Russians, which is a manifestation of reason. And here I am talking about music and philosophy and German idealism, but it is a moment in the development of reason to, how should I explain this? Reason discovers the world as its own world, and it must become aware that all the negativity within the world is the own negativity of reason, my own negativity. And this is the most difficult thing, to accept the negative in the world as being the reflection of my own negativity. And yeah, the song, got a case of a love bipolar. God is in a bipolar relationship with himself, and that's what Hegel means when he says that the concept resembles magnetic polarity, that there are opposite poles within God's mind, the positive and the negative, love and hatred. You change your mind like a girl changes her clothes. The constant change of mind of the negative, but of the whole of being, is produced by a dialectical movement. And my emotions and my thoughts are in a dialectical relationship with the emotions and the thoughts of the substance. And I alternate between anxiety and fear and depression and joy and seriousness and comical moments. I am on a roller coaster ride, and so is the substance, because we are a being thinking its own emotions and feeling its own thoughts. And yeah. You talk about Newtonian physics. The modern physicist, empirical, rational in a classical modern sense of the world, the physique der Verstand, the physics of the understanding, they are in a process of abolishing the Newtonian paradigm, and the modern books on physics produced by empiricists, they are negating the deadly mechanistic Newtonian paradigm, and they are rediscovering unconsciously, because the modern physicists are often ignorant in philosophy, not because they are stupid, but because they are completely dedicated to understanding physics, so they don't have the time to read 19th century philosophers, but they are rediscovering unconsciously, and that's a cunning of reason, a Schellingian, Hegelian perspective on nature. And so it's a dialectical process through which der Verstand, which is mechanistic, dualistic thinking, abolishes itself. It's the dialectical negation of abstract, one-sided thought, and to arrive at a more rational, in a sense of speculative consideration of nature. And the materialist, empirically minded physicists of modern times are abolishing matter and abolishing dead mechanism for a more organistic or organic and immaterial even view of nature. So hopefully someday the empirically minded physicist will understand that they are in a process of adopting a Goethean, Schellingian, Hegelian view of nature. I said that Darwinism is probably alchemy produced backward, projected backward in time. That the how should I explain this? The first step in order to arrive at a consciousness of the divine is to adopt a chronological view of the cosmic history, to have a cosmological view of cosmic development and biological development. So classical cosmological history and the theory of evolution with the Darwinian process of struggle for life and natural selection, which produced man, which produced consciousness and intelligence, it is a moment in the process of reason becoming conscious of itself. But I have not yet solved this mystery. But when reason becomes conscious of itself, it acquires the certainty that the world cannot have pre-existed consciousness. It is consciousness which sets the world and not the other way around. But the view that consciousness emerges from life, which emerges from chemistry, which emerges from the material existence, must be adopted and then aufgehoben. I also wrote that I love you infinitely, Matthew, but knowing that a part of me resents you because I am an idealist and you are an idealist, but I am the one who suffers most, and my suffering produces some sort of resentment. But in the view of God, I love you infinitely. Life is the idea made manifest. The idea is a totality which determines all the parts. It is the whole which precedes logically the parts, and the parts of a living totality, of an ideal totality, have their existence and their interconnectedness and their relation only in the idea of the totality. And that's why Hegel says that the highest presentation of the idea, the logical idea, the totality of all logical determinations flowing through one another and developing what we call logic and speculative logic, makes itself manifest to itself in the realm of nature in the form of life. And that's why life is an idea in the Hegelian sense. And here I wrote, I am the negative, so I have darkness within me. And when we adopt this cosmological Darwinian perspective on nature, we have the view that consciousness and intelligence emerge out of non-consciousness, non-intelligence, and dead materiality and dead physicality. Life emerges out of death, and intelligence emerges out of life. That's the classical view. And I have understood in my intellectual process that eugenics, which was developed in the at the end of the 19th century and thrived in the early 20th century and gave birth partly to National Socialism. Eugenics, in this cosmological perspective, is nature becoming conscious through man of its own potentialities for developing itself and using its own laws. In this cosmological perspective, human consciousness is a product of the laws of nature. It can reflect upon the laws of nature, which means upon itself, and use these laws to improve itself in order to achieve ever higher levels of intelligence and strength and beauty. So it's the natural process becoming conscious of its potentiality for transcending itself. And one cannot understand the political history of the 20th century in the West, but in the world at large, without understanding the role of eugenics. And in order to understand reality, one must replace the eugenic movement within the realm of Schellingian, Fichtean perspective of nature. Yeah. I wrote, everything that God creates is amazing. I maintain. I said that God, in the form of the negative, is angry against himself, and he's angry against others, because there are moments when the negative and people within creation are not capable of appreciating creation, and God is angry against himself because at a certain level of consciousness, God knows that whatever he produces is amazing, and at a lower level of consciousness, the negative says, I don't like this part of creation. And then God gets angry against the negative, and the negative gets angry against God, because they don't reciprocally see the magic of creation. And that is the origin of anger within God, what we call the wrath of God. Yeah, you talk about free lawfulness to willingly abide by one's own laws. You say that natural beauty is, these are my words, but inspired from you, that natural beauty is crushing beauty, sublime beauty, and terrifying beauty also. And I wrote that I am afraid of myself, which is true. And I am afraid of nature because the beauty of nature is overwhelming, and it gives a sense of being annihilated in your singular self by contemplating the sublime aspect of the natural and organic process. And you said that the symbol of the moral superiority of the mind over nature is the cross. And I agree. So the difficult task of the negative is to love being crucified and to appreciate God within suffering. And yeah, I will stop there for now. I will make a second video, and yeah, hopefully I have enabled you to enlighten aspects of your own understanding of yourself and of your relationship with nature and with God. And I cannot comment on your entire life history and your personal experiences, but hopefully by planting the seeds of knowledge, when the time comes, you will understand yourself and understand me and understand God maybe. And yeah.